Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to a design review of some new functionality for Wolfram language. And this is about course making. Okay. We're still building up infrastructure of form notebooks and question objects. Okay. All right. So where do we start here? So we just heard from John in a completely different connection that he doesn't think form notebooks are adequate. So maybe we'll learn something about that in this meeting. Okay, so let's go ahead. So what are we looking at here? And whose wireframe is this?
This
Who
is
made this wireframe?
This is Yuru's wireframe. This one is extremely simple. This
Okay,
is
is whoever made the wireframe here?
Yep.
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Stephen, I'd like to point out off the bat that there's another meeting scheduled for streaming tomorrow that's very related. So
which is what?
It's more focused on question object and the programmatic Wolfram language design of question and answer.
So let me just set the stage here. Okay, the purpose of a form notebook is to allow people to use a notebook as an enhanced form of form in which you're entering rich, complex things like multicellular inputs that will be effectively ingested by a program, just like in an ordinary form. You would take things that you put into fields, and those fields would be inserted into, through an association, would be, fed to a function. A form notebook, its goal is to take rich objects, including effectively notebook content, and take those objects and be able to feed them to a function so that, for example, one could use a form notebook as a submission mechanism for a repository or something and collect material for that ready so that it can be put through perhaps a template notebook into a final form in the repository. Is that a fair summary of what our objectives are?
Yes, and they could be used for all kinds of things. Submission, the report generation. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So in version 12.3, we have an early version of form notebooks, right? And we've announced form notebooks, and we've got, so if I do form new programmatic notebook, form authoring, form notebook authoring, then I will get something here, which is an authoring notebook for form notebooks.
Yep.
Okay, so now what you're showing me here is, by the way, something I want to point out, UX issue. When I go to 150% here, I would like to understand under what circumstances we are expanding infrastructure content and when we are not. So for example, Wolfram Alpha assumptions never get expanded when you expand the notebook. It depends why you're expanding the notebook, whether that's a problem or not. But I think we need to, this is a quite separate discussion, I think we need to have a, that's a UX, etc. discussion about how we specify whether you expand the infrastructure elements. John Fultz, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I would say that as a general rule of thumb, if what we're talking about is part of the Chrome, then it's not subject to magnification.
Right. But my question to you would be, let's go to 200% here. And let's say I say control equals, I don't know, Boston. Okay, that's expanded. Now I go to the ... and ooh, it's micro.
Yeah, no, there's a judgment call to be made here. And I'm not going to claim that every judgment call so made is absolutely correct.
Well, I think that this could be correct. It depends on the circumstances. I think that what's really needed is something slightly more subtle in terms of magnification that says either magnify only primary content or magnify everything.
So one of the pragmatic problems that we run into is, and that wouldn't be a problem with this interface, but with toolbars. When you magnify them,
Yeah,
they get
they
much
don't
more
fit.
crowded, and yeah, you run into real problems, things overlapping one another.
Well, I mean, that can be simulated by making the notebook narrower. So, I mean, we've got to solve that problem somewhere anyway.
It can be partially simulated, not entirely simulated.
All right, look, let's not derail
Yeah.
this meeting, but can we put that on, where should that be? User assistance?
We can discuss it in user assistance. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be a thing. Maybe Christina could take a look at what magnifies and what doesn't as a start for this.
Parth, do you want to take that and either for yourself or pass it to Manu?
Yeah, I'll just take it and get working on it. And we'll also look at the accessibility, because we've been looking at that.
Yes, this is a good accessibility issue. I mean, I think in the end, what it's going to be is some kind of, in the magnify thing, there would be a more button here that would say magnify everything or don't magnify everything. You see what I'm saying? Or a checkbox here, magnify everything, don't magnify everything. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yep. I see what you're saying. Of course, you already know my gut reaction to adding more options and decisions for things.
It's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible. But I think, there are cases in which you genuinely want one or the other. Like for a presentation, you want to magnify everything typically. Well, except where you don't, where it's some sort of random password field or something.
And I should say, like 95% of the time when someone complains to me about this, it's an internal person who was trying to, demonstrate a feature on an overhead.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Not necessarily just internal people, but anybody who wants to use us for that. Okay, let's go back to topic. Okay, so what we've got now.
Well, I should say the reason I say internal people is because it's often features that one wouldn't bother to demonstrate except to demonstrate the feature itself.
I see. Okay, fair enough. That one would just use as piece of infrastructure, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the predictive interface, for example. One wouldn't normally use a predictive interface in a the suggestions bar.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's set context here. So the thing we're about to look at the wireframe for is part of the insert menu. Is that correct?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and insert a form element?
Okay. So I insert an input field.
And add an additional field option. So the UX issue is after you add one, you don't have the option to remove it.
Okay. Well, I mean, John, are you going to blow up this whole UX?
No, actually, I've reviewed the UXs that we're looking at here. So, okay. So, and hopefully, kept it sensible, but you be the judge of that.
What the hell? I mean, add field. No, we can't say that. This whole thing is a field. What do you mean? It's not adding a. What do you mean add field? What does that even mean? What does that mean? Oh, I see. That's another. What? Why are we doing this? No. What the heck is this? To add a field, you use form element and add another field. Why are we putting that inside here? That makes no sense. There's a brain disconnection. Explain. Whoever created this, explain what that is supposed to be about.
So, so the thing is, for one key element, there could be, like, in the code, user can actually have multiple fields.
I'm sorry, what the heck are you talking about?
You like inside of a form object, you can have two input
For
fields.
example, in a and for example,
wait a minute. You told me you were solving a different problem. You told me you were solving the problem of there was a hint added. Oh, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, you can't be serious. You can't be serious. You can't be serious. Read the heading of this thing. It says input field, right? It's an input field, okay? You have put a button in here that says add field.
Right.
Okay, let's just do a little bit of a think moment. Why is that a bad idea? Okay, who can tell me why that's a bad idea? Gosh, why do I need?
What is a field? Is a field a big blob, or is a field a single?
What is a
fields
field?
all over the place?
Yeah, everything's fields. We're an agricultural society here.
I think soccer is a soccer thing.
Oh, okay, fine.
Football, soccer.
Okay, I don't understand. There are two different things we might want here. One is this, which is very confusingly named to begin with, but okay, so.
Yeah, I agree that is a confusing name.
Okay, so I don't understand what this is supposed to be, because this is now adding a whole other input field, which I thought I was doing by pressing input field to add an input field. Why am I adding an input field inside this box?
So that was thinking of the case where user might need to have multiple input fields for one question.
But that's not how we do it. The whole point of that is you can have as many input fields as you want. What do you mean by one question? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
If you look at like the first example in form objects, the first example is using two input fields within the same form object.
Like a first name, last name, you're saying, where you don't want to vertically separate.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
No.
What are you doing? What?
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree with having multiple fields.
This is just
like
unbelievably confusing. We've got three levels of fieldiness here, right? We've got, you insert an input field. It's got fields within fields, okay? It's like, okay, we got a field within a field here, right? This is a field within a field. And this is now a field within a field within a field, right? And I don't understand what the point of this is. What is the different functionality that you achieve by having, it's just crazy. I'm sorry. It's completely bonkers to me. Okay, so hold on. What is this now? This is a form object. What is the difference between having this as two separate fields in the form notebook and having them combined? I'm confused here.
Is the point that they'll be structured together in the resulting data?
No, I don't think they are. I think they're structured by their names here. That what gets returned here is just this thing here, right?
Well, presumably, if you wanted to do something like this in a form notebook, then the results from this would be under the same key in the like submitted association.
Okay, but why do we want that? That just seems unbelievably confusing. I mean, we've already got enough levels of confusion. Right, we don't need it. Nobody's asking for hierarchical keys here. If you want hierarchical keys, name the keys hierarchically and you've got hierarchical keys.
Could you get this behavior potentially by having a compound element as the interpreter?
So another really good example is actually the checkboxes, where it's actually you have, I don't have it here really spec, but in a real example, the checkboxes actually have the different options. And
okay, well, let's take a look. Checkboxes. By the way, somebody's got the something wrong with their phone. Okay, this is not the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. This is not multiple input fields in an input field. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is pieces of an element, a form element that we know has multiple pieces, right? Because
if you want to add D, how do you do it?
Add what?
If you want to add D, right now there's A, B,
well,
and C.
Okay, I understand that. But don't show me this where we're adding input fields to input fields.
No, I agree with that.
Garbage, guys.
Actually, by the way, the Stephen, I would disagree with the statement that you just made that this is multiple pieces of the same thing. It really isn't. I mean, these are every checkbox is independent.
Oh, really? Oh, well, then
it's radio buttons.
Oh,
that would be mutually exclusive.
Right. But the whole point about this is format-wise, this is formatted as a bar across the page. Is that correct? And that's why you're putting them all in the same box.
Maybe I don't. Let's see. No, they're not. Actually, they're formatted in a column.
Okay, but we're returning from this a single element. on the right-hand side, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll all be under the same key, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. Yes, that's what I'm asking. Right. But so now somebody has the bright idea, which is a new idea, of having multiple input fields under the same key. Is that correct? How would the input fields in your multi-input field thing? How are the input fields being combined?
Well, I mean, we already have this discrepancy. I mean, checkboxes and input fields are different for no good reason.
Well, wait a minute. What is this going to return? When I say label,
it'll be key 1 goes to an association. It's nested to an association that's like A goes to true, B goes to false, C goes to true.
Okay. Okay. So you imagine in this case that you would have the label here for the input field will be not the outer label, but an inner label. But what's the outer label of all of the family of input fields here?
That little key 1 that's hanging on the bottom tab.
Okay. And so an input field normally doesn't have a label. Is that true? When I just create, what is label? Oh, label 1, is that just
input fields do have a label. They always do.
But that's just what's displayed, right? It's not it's not anything to do with the association. It's not the key. Correct? Okay, so what is wrong here is for input for checkboxes.
It's not, sorry, it's not the key, but the label does appear in the association as well.
Okay, I understand. But what you've done, which is a hack, is in checkboxes, apparently you're using the labels for the checkboxes as keys in the association. Is that a true statement?
On the second level.
Yes, so that's a true statement. So
Yep.
then
And it's the same for input fields.
Oh, but no, it's the same for input fields in this wacky approach here, right?
No, it is right now.
Okay, so wait a minute. What's this key here?
That is the top level key in the association.
Okay, and then it has a second level key that says label 1. Is that right?
That's correct.
And is label 1 both the textual label and no, that seems like the wrong way to do it. I mean, who cares what the textual label is? You don't want to have to modify your code.
Yeah,
another word in the textual label.
Maybe it might be a sensible default, but you would certainly want the option to do things like put a graphic there or something like that.
Yes,
and then having the graphic be in the name of the key is just absurd.
Crazy. So wait a minute. So there's an outer key for the whole thing, and then there's an inner key for each element. Is that what you're saying?
Like that's specifically to handle this thing, such as the checkboxes and whatever, where you have multiple.
Okay, so in fact, there's a mistake here, right? So this should be something that says, element key or something. Right, for these sub pieces here, and it can default to the label, but it can also say element separate key for that element, right?
That's an option. Yeah, I mean,
well, that's what we have to
so
do.
Yeah, the thing is that currently, like I was mentioning earlier, is that form objects you can have a form object that has multiple input fields in it. No. Form notebooks use form objects, and so there has to be some way to handle this thing where you have multiple.
You're addressing a different issue. I'm saying rip apart the fact that the label for an element is, or a sub-element, which is what these really are, the label for a sub-element is the key for the sub-association. That's an incorrect connection.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It could be the default, but it sure shouldn't be what you have to do.
Right.
All right. So what you've got here is you've got an outer key for the main form element. And what you've got here are what we can call sub-elements, right? These things here are sub-elements. Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you've got is you've got sort of an add sub-element. Add one more of the same sub-elements, correct? Which you want to do for checkboxes, and you say you want to do for input fields as well. So what will happen is if you have only one of it,
Or
like
alternatively, strike existing ones.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
you know,
Well, hold on,
I didn't want 3 checkboxes. I wanted
Okay,
2.
hold on. You've got a different data structure that's coming back. So is it the case that when you have even a single input field, that the payload that comes back is outer key, arrow, inner key, arrow value? Is
That is
correct?
correct. Yes.
Okay, fine. So then what's happening is, so whatever the key metaphor is for the outer thing, I think you should use the same metaphor for the inner object. That is, you are labeling what's happening with a key. If everything needs a key, then it seems to me much clearer to use that same metaphor here. Either the key is up there, or the key goes with that form element thing up here as a key over here, for example. And then there's a sub, for each sub element, there's also a key, right? Represented in the same kind of way. Does that make sense?
I think so.
I mean, to me, yeah. So what is the advantage of getting, so you're allowing 2 levels of hierarchy that you are sort of automatically setting up here. That is, every time I put in a form element, it is a top level association element, right? So those keys, key 1, key 2, et cetera, those are unified across the whole notebook.
Correct.
Correct? Okay, so then you're saying that each form element can again have multiple sub-elements with their own keys.
Correct.
And in fact, always does so. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So then these should be indicated some other way. I'm not sure I had ever understood that. Okay, so this is spectacularly wrong. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is the kind of thing that makes kind of like steam come out of my ears about UX, okay? It's like, you know, this wasn't thought about. You can't have something that says add field to a thing that's already saying it's an input field.
Well,
yes,
and really, we don't even, you know, we can just have, you know, a plus. I mean, it's a list. You plus to add to the end of the list. That's doesn't need to be anything more than that.
No, it doesn't need to say field. But I mean, okay. But this is completely and utterly. Gosh, this is so confused. Oh my gosh, you really messed this up. I'm sorry. Okay, let me make a criterion. Okay, when I see one of these UX designs, what should happen is, it should not be more confusing than it was to begin with. And it should not be the case that in, you know, a fraction of a second, I can tell you that it's wrong. Please don't make me do that.
So yeah, so the initial goal of this add field button was coming from because if user wants to add another field, especially for the checkbox, they have to go to the code.
Okay. Let me just give you my point of view about UX, okay? I expect you to think, right? By the time you're showing me something where in a fraction of a second I can tell you it's wrong, that's not the right thing.
Yeah, I do understand that.
Okay. What else are we looking at here? So
the way that we've defined this with like the top level keys, sub elements, I think that that's going to help the way forward on this one. I think that we should go to the next agenda item.
Okay. All right. But just to be clear here, we've got 2 completely different. I mean, it's so confused. It's just outrageously confused. What are you doing here? What the heck are you doing? This has to do with adding things like masking to the field, right? This has to do with, well, were you just completely confused about what this does? I just don't get it. Please don't put me through this, Parth. It's an important thing.
Yeah, we'll make sure this doesn't happen again, Stephen. We'll take a look and make sure you don't do that stuff anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to, I never want this to happen again. This is what happened with hyperlinks. We had to go through like 8 meetings with me. I'm exaggerating. It was probably like 4 of unscrambling, confusion, complete confusion. We can't have that. Okay. All right, so you've confused here something to do with adding a mask, for example, here, right? With adding a complete new sub-element. Am I right that you confused that?
I have just moved that to the
Oh,
top.
no, you haven't moved it. It's a different thing.
No, he did.
It's,
He did.
It's
at the
add
top there.
additional option to in the blue box there. So I didn't remove it. It's just
okay, but that's completely a stupid place to put it. Since we just had a sequence of these things here and we're adding a new one of those, we're not going to have it at the top.
So if we're done undressing this UX, can we just move on to the next agenda item?
No, because I want to actually get I don't want you to come back with another piece of stupid UX and have me have to fix it again. Let's just nail it right now.
You don't think it's nailed?
No, it's not nailed.
Okay.
Okay, there's two different things here, right?
On the next one down, where you have input field 1 and input field 2.
You're very faint. We can barely hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
That thing where it says remove field, is that referring to an option or to a sub-element?
that refers to the sub element for the option.
Because
is
it's
the
got a
actual
separate
element.
remove field up here.
Right. It's sort of confusing. I mean, it's probably just because we're using the word field everywhere, but that being next to additional option fields seems like they're related and they're not.
Okay.
Right.
So, okay. So look, additional option fields. We called it that, not thinking of the input field case. Right? We need to have
the terminology of sub-element seems to be fairly helpful here, I think.
Right, I agree. But this is so, okay, edit. Okay, then we can say somewhere down here, add another sub-element. Add a sub-element. But the key for this sub-element has to be indicated somewhere.
Well, I mean, we can't say form element and then sub-elements.
Edit this form element. I think we could say, I mean, it's a form sub-element. I don't think we have to say form again. But I want to know where we put the key associated with this sub-element. Right, that's the key for the whole form element. And to me, it would be nice to associate that key with the thing that says form element here. Do you see what I'm saying? Given that we have sub-elements.
Right.
I mean, this is fine if we have no sub-elements. It's fine to attach it here. But if we're going to have sub-elements, we're going to have something where the key for the sub-elements is indicated in a completely different way from the key for the whole form element. Make sense? And that's not right.
Just had a color that all the keys, you know, the key tab at the bottom and the key fields in the body share some sort of color.
Nick is commenting that why is there a hassle about form elements having multiple input fields? Because it's utterly confusing. And J3 is commenting contextual menus will come in handy. The problem with a contextual menu is nobody knows it's there. It's not discoverable. Okay, I mean, we could have things on hover, but I think that's, again, very confusing. Okay, so hold on. There is a key for there's a key for the whole form element, right? And there is a key, and sometimes, quite often, you never need to worry about what that key is. So we don't want to put it in your face if you don't need to worry about it.
Sorry, why don't we need to know what the key is?
Because you just see what it produces and then you write code around it. In other words, if it's just, oh, I just want a bunch of values, you just get the keys, they're key 1, key 2, key 3, and you just say values of that, and then you're a happy person. It's only for...
Yeah, you don't want to have to worry about sub keys.
Well, not only subkeys, but also keys, them top level keys. Okay, let's go through this again. Okay, so what we've got
I feel like you need to care about some key because you need to be able to differentiate.
Sometimes you don't. If you just are taking a bunch of things.
Unless your form only has one field in it.
Yeah, all right, right, fair enough. Okay, so one possibility. Okay, so we've got a key for the form element, and we've got a key for every sub-element. So every sub-element here, I mean, we could as well have something that has just a field called key here.
Right. That's what I was proposing. And maybe give it a special color and have it match the color for the tab at the bottom. That's the key on the whole thing.
That's possible. But then the default would be, which we think is a useful default, is to have the label and the key be the same thing. In which case, maybe we lead with the key, and just like we do for interpreter, in a form function, by default, the prompt is the same as the name of the object. So I think that's what we should do.
Well, frankly, in that case, we can omit the label from the default listing entirely.
Exactly.
Yeah, the label can be none. Fields. Like label, you can set it to be none, and then there won't be a label.
Okay, guys.
No. It's what I'm suggesting is that the automatic value would be the same as the key.
Exactly. Right. So the first element here says key, not label, and you get to add a label if you want to. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then 80 or 90% of the time, that will be what you want. But you do want to be able to override it for the other 10%.
In fact, this is the right thing to do, because it's exactly how form function works. Form function is exactly, X arrow Boolean or something. That's exactly how it works. And the default is to use that X as both the key and the prompt.
And as people say, add additional sub-element, they should be filled in with unique values automatically. Then if you don't care, you don't care. And you can just wrap everything in values on the back end.
Yeah.
Whoa, wait a second. You're talking about a different thing. So what I'm saying is change this so that when you add a new form element, the first thing says key here, and there's an additional thing called label, which is, I believe, the language we use for form function.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay,
I'm on the same page as you.
Yeah. You and Bob are agreeing.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Some, like we said, some people don't care about keys or subkeys because they're just pulling out values and they're using their positional indices.
So your point is that
so automatically pre-populate them with unique values that are short.
Okay, fine. But what are they going to be? Maybe they should be in gray before you type them in. Otherwise, people will be confused. I mean, we could call them item 1 or something.
Well, I mean, if you use consistent language.
Sub-key 1.
If you're calling these things sub-elements, then sub-element 1, sub-element 2. I don't know if that's the right name, but it seems like the language should be consistent, though.
Well, unless we call them items. Would items be consistent with anything we're doing in grids and things?
Well, an item is a thing used in a grid, but I don't think there's necessarily confusion, though. It's, there's enough distance between that and this. I don't think they get confused.
I don't know whether item helps. The problem is, by the time we're talking about sub-elements, it sounds like category theory or something. I mean, it sounds very complicated.
It does. Yeah, I agree with that.
All this sounds reasonable to me. I just still have one question, which is, how does it, like, if you choose a key, does it display that key as the label of the input field?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly the same thing that form function does.
Yeah, and it
works well there. Mm-hmm. I mean, the other possibility is leave the key blank initially. I don't think filling in a default key is a very good idea.
We don't want to leave.
It's annoying, honestly.
So just leave it blank. And if you say confirm with that key being blank, it says and complains. Right? It just says it's a required field. Big deal. There are lots of required fields. Okay, so that's what I suggest we do for that. Now, where does that mean? Okay, so now we have to.
If it's blank, we should at least have hint text though.
Oh yeah, sure, that's fine. But it's going to say key on the left anyway. We can have a question mark thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not dealing with. How do we deal with this? Probably less essential. Well, maybe we can leave this for now. This outer key here, it's a little bit confusing. And then we would say new subelement. At the bottom here, we would say add subelement, right? Which would add another one of these. I think this has got to be called key. I just think it's way too confusing to call it anything other than key. And then it might suggest that we call this somehow for this form cell. What the heck is the difference between a form element and a form cell?
I think that hint
It
text
should be
is
consistent.
probably- yeah, it should be consistent.
Okay, so then, look, I think what we should do is label this as form element key. Perhaps have what we do is, I know we wanted to make these subsidiary, but if we call that form element key and this just key here, that's a key for this.
Well,
Maybe
I mean,
we should-
I would have referred to, I don't know how this is presented in the interface, but I would have referred to the outer thing as a form key and the inner thing maybe as an element key.
We shouldn't say form key because the whole thing is a form. We've got a form within a form within a form.
We can call something a field. It can be a field and an element.
That's what I mean. What are the top level keys in a form?
I think they're form element keys. I really don't think they should be called form keys because I think that's going to make it more. I don't think that's understandable.
Are we going to call anything a field?
I'm sorry?
Are we going to call anything a field? We can't call everything a field, but we could call one thing a field.
I'm not sure we want that. I mean, okay, let's look at, I think form element is a fine name. So I think if we called it form element key and had it over here and had it indicating that it's for the whole thing, I think that would be reasonable. Form element key and have it be some kind of field like that you enter it into. Now, do I profoundly worry about whether it's at the bottom or the top? I think it would be better at the top to go along with this because we have, and then what I would do is have a separator even at the top there to indicate that there could be multiple sub-elements here so that you don't, so this becomes the header for this whole blue box.
No, we don't need a separator. Well, I don't know, maybe
I think we could do at least more space, and I think a separator wouldn't be bad.
But definitely, I mean, if we take my idea of a separator and then a plus button below it.
Yeah, then it would a separator with a plus button below. That would be a straightforward way to add, and a mouse over there that says, I mean, we don't really need to name these things. Then it's pretty obvious that you're going to get another one of these.
Wait, so form element key, is that the label that's used in cases that don't have sub-elements? I don't know what elements have sub-elements.
No. Sub-elements, everything has a form element key and it has a key. That's an item key. A key
but you only need both if you have sub-elements, right?
But we're giving you both in all cases.
Right. The structure of the data doesn't change based on whether or not you have multiple sub-elements.
It just makes it more confusing if that's not common. Right, in an input field case, single input field case, sub-elements is confusing.
Yeah, I could see it being confusing the first time you ever use it, but after that, I think.
Say that again,
just
Jeremy.
having it be consistent.
So I've got a single input field, and I want to submit the data and know what it is, person's name or their last name.
I know, and you've got.
So which thing labels the first name or last name? or do I have to name two things?
You got to name two things. It's very grotesque.
Yeah.
You've got two levels here, and that's what they've set up. And I think that's the only thing we can set up here, because I think everything else, I mean, I personally, the fact that we have these sub-elements seems kind of stupid to me. Given that, I mean, why do we have sub-elements at all?
You need them for radio buttons. That's clear, but I'm not sure.
Why do you need them for radio buttons?
Radio buttons is a
No,
multi-list,
no,
right?
actually, no, you don't. Take a look at, Stephen, go ahead and insert a radio button and you'll see why you don't actually need it.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you
Nice
need
and
for
simple.
checkbox, definitely.
No, you
Checkbox.
don't.
No,
Why?
no, you don't. Each checkbox is independent.
so when do you need multiple elements? Because it confuses everything.
think
But then
you don't.
in the current design of the checkbox form, if you want to add one more field, user
No,
have to
I'm
go-
asking, what's the case where somebody's going to want this feature?
First name, last name.
Why do you need that? Why don't you just have a first
Have
name?
two.
But
Yeah.
Is it a layout
Because you
issue
want the
where those are
data.
side
You want
by
the data
side?
to be structured on the back end, probably.
no, wrong. Don't agree.
Not a good
can
reason
have-
to make this more complicated.
Right. The case of people who have hierarchical forms, they can make the forms hierarchical by making the keys hierarchical. See what I'm saying?
But does that give you a side-by-side layout? Is that a reason?
Nothing gives you a side-by-side layout at this time.
On the web, but I guess not in a notebook, right?
Right. So the question of side-by-side layout, to me, that's a separate thing, and that could be done with directives, because we are going to author the thing in a sequential layout.
I mean, the two reasons I can see for supporting sub-elements, and I'm not saying these are strong reasons, but they're reasons. One is, because they're all put in a single cell, there's a certain visual grouping that you get for free when you're doing that. The second is sorry, what was the second? I'm sorry, my mind blanked. I did have another reason, but my mind blanked.
And you could also get around the need to have the sub-elements in the authoring notebook if we let people put a compound element as the interpreter.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be
Let's
quite
get
as
rid of
GUI
some-
like.
Sorry. The second reason is just because of the tediousness of constantly, pulling up the form element pop-up or hitting these things. So I'm not saying it's a strong reason, but there is a.
Look, we're putting them right here. You've got a new input field, you put it here. Let's get rid of sub-elements. You guys have not made a compelling case for them.
Yeah, I'm the
Strip
one
them
arguing. I'm the one arguing strongest for us, and I don't even really want them.
Right.
Yeah,
And that
so-
way we can get rid of the obscurity of having this separate key here.
I
Don't
I
even
don't
need
want
that.
them, but it's possible to type a form element with sub elements.
I think that we just have to have, better parsing of the code to say you can't do that. Right? I mean, if somebody
Yeah, I
goes
mean,
into
so
the
the-
code view and they
yeah,
put
like-
in,
Okay, fine. So that's not the way we solve the problem. Is by if there's something that you can specify programmatically that we do not have a UI for, so be it.
Right.
Can we have code that somehow grays out the template? We know it's not template supportable and we
Okay.
just gray that button out.
Yeah, and then we just have the code version.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all we have.
that's a good idea.
Okay, all right. So we're ripping out sub-elements. Yeehaw. Okay. And what's going to happen is, and we're ripping out this down here, and that's just going to become key up here, right? Just like a form function. Am I making sense?
I mean, you could still have a separate label than a key,
Right. That should
Absolutely.
be under the additional
Absolutely.
options.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
Right.
but yeah.
And
Okay,
do
so
we-
now the question
and-
is-
and do we know what the code form of one of these new things is?
Because that's going to be one level.
Because that's something that I hadn't realized and probably influenced this whole design in the first place, is that the code form is a form object. So it's like, this in a way, this parallels form objects, this sub key design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but form objects don't require a subkey. Form objects allow a top level thing. So I don't know what we're doing with a subkey there.
Okay. I didn't know that. I'm not a form object expert, so.
Right. So we should the nested form object case is a corner case as far as I'm concerned, and it's not the thing that wags the whole UX. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think by relegating it makes it a lot more straightforward.
Okay, so then we've got one additional thing we have to figure out, which is, okay, so we've got two things. First of all, the X, the hover X to delete a field. Fine. Right? Hover, you get an X, you delete the field. That seems okay to me. Now, the question is, how do you get an additional option field?
If we still want to keep the existing one here, that still works.
I'm sorry?
Like we still have the additional option field right now in this interface, and that is where
I know.
Right.
I'm addressing a different question, which is that the right name for it? The operation is fine.
Oh, okay.
What this is doing is fine.
And do we still want it to be in the same location?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. There's no problem with it. The problem is this unbelievable confusion with sub-elements.
Could you say, instead of additional option fields, could you say specify additional options?
Yeah,
and just say additional options, ...
Yeah, that's better. Just get rid of the word fields. That's the confusing part.
Except that they're not options.
Yeah, that's where we kept running into it. And in the form object page, they're called elements, but we say insert form element. And so
what are they? Can we see the list again? They're options. How are these not options?
Because option means blah arrow blah in a function, and these are not that.
So pedantic in the definition of option in Mathematica.
Yeah, right.
So just use a lowercase o.
Exactly. I think people understand these as options, right? Lowercase options.
So we just say more options, ...
Yeah.
I maybe you won't like this, but I mean, I like the Apple Mail design in the compose window, which is, simple icon that's, I think, comparatively easy to decode. Just bring up a new mail.
Which one?
It's to the right of the sorry, on the left side to the right of the send mail. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's perfectly possible.
I mean, the iconography lends itself to, here's a list of things and you're adding or removing from that
Except
list.
everything is words here. I mean, we could have that icon and then say more ... Then I think that will be fairly clear.
Yeah.
The icon indicates what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's move on. I think we've got a solution here. Yeah, go ahead.
Two small picks. Could we not, so edit this form element? Could we change that to gray or black, but not blue? It looks like a link to me because everything clickable is blue. And then
Fine.
In addition, change form element to specific to the thing it is. I'm not seeing input field or radio button or any of that.
That's a good point.
Edit this input field or edit this
exactly.
radio
good
button.
Point. Good point.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. Okay. There've been some comments on our live stream here. Properties. Nick is suggesting attributes or properties, all of which, well, I don't think, I think we've got a good solution with just the icon and the more. Okay, let's move on. That was not a happy moment, but what's next in the agenda?
UX of the settings dialog, choosing or customizing submission actions.
For this, Stephen, I will mention, I think it's too much to ask users to add that many submission options. We should start with 2, data bin and email, and really work those cases down and then add another.
I don't agree with you.
I mean,
I don't agree.
I'll
tell you why. I'll tell you why. The most important reason for create local notebook is so you can debug what on earth you're doing. If the only way to tell what you're doing is to go look at your email, you're very confused. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm not even entirely certain what to expect from create notebook, whether local or cloud.
It just pops up a notebook.
Preview mode? Shouldn't you be able to preview? Like, you shouldn't have to create a submission to check your work.
But you do have to, because no, but part of the problem is that once you've created a notebook, once you've authored a form notebook, what happens after that is completely. You see what I'm saying? You no longer are connected to the authoring environment. See what I'm saying? This is all gone by the time you're actually submitting a notebook through the form notebook mechanism.
Okay, I see.
I mean, so create notebook creates one notebook for each response.
No. Notebook. No. Let me explain. Okay, you author a form notebook. Okay, then when you and this is something. Okay, then you could have multiple instances of that form notebook. No, that's not right. You author a form notebook. You create the form that somebody is going to fill in. Somebody fills that form in, then they press submit, and then something else is generated from that. So it's a 3-step thing. First you author.
No. I get that. My question is, what happens when it's done for a second time? Does it create separate notebooks for each response?
Oh, you mean
aggregate
in the case of
the
create
responses
cloud
into a single notebook, or what?
No, it creates a separate a separate local notebook for every response. Every time you fill out, every time you press submit, it will create a new document. Right? Every time you press submit, it's like I'm requesting a new, delivery of a new platypus or something. It's got a separate, it's a separate, manifest, so to speak.
Gosh, I'm, aside from the see what it did, I'm struggling to understand the utility of that.
Oh, I'll tell you what's useful about it. Okay, let's say that what you're doing is you're using this to, you want to produce something. In fact, I've needed this a bunch of times. Okay, so here's the thing: you're doing some, I don't know. You're going to do okay. Here's a use case. I'm creating a series of computer experiments. Each one has certain parameters. Okay, I'm going to run them I'm going to fill in the parameters. I'm going to use the form notebook to set up the experiment. The result of my experiment is a bunch of specimens, right? There's a notebook full of specimens. And that's the thing that I want, that I'm then going to do something with myself. I'm then going to, that's my end product. In other words, I'm using, okay, so you might ask the question.
Sorry, I mean, it sounds like you're putting together form notebooks and template notebooks.
Well, I know.
I don't expect form notebooks to do computation. I expect form notebooks to scrape data.
What if you were going to take the resulting association and put it in a piece of code that you already had?
Which is fine, but you don't actually specify, or you shouldn't actually specify that in a form notebook.
But how would you specify it? How would you do it? That's the point of the custom thing here. In other words, what we're saying is, in a template notebook, you have the structure of the notebook specified.
I mean, you're making a template notebook feature that's not template notebooks.
In some
What it
sense,
seems
yes,
like to me.
Well, yes and no.
Why
Yes
would you
and
do
no.
that?
Yes and no. Yes and no. A template notebook is layout first. You are creating a template notebook specifies a template of the final layout you want. Okay, this does not do that. This has no layout defined in it is simply splurting out a collection of data. Okay, but what I'm saying and what you're saying, which is correct, is when it splurts that collection of data, one thing I might want to do with that collection of data is feed it into a template notebook to have that data formatted in a nice way. That will be a role for a template notebook. The question is there a need to have the limp, unformatted kind of, just pure, here's pieces of data in a notebook version of that? Which I've certainly found useful for debugging this.
I mean, even for debugging, I think data bins are beautiful for this.
Why? How do you view it? See, what I want is, look, I'm trying to write my form notebook, okay? I say, deploy form notebook.
I mean, you can just go to the web page for the data bin and look at it.
I know, but you don't want the web page. You want a notebook because no. In fact, that is profoundly wrong, okay? And here's why. The whole point of a form notebook is that you can put notebook content into it. Saying go to a web page to look at notebook content is crazy, right? You've got singing, dancing notebook content. You want to be able to make use. You want to be able to look at that. The place where you want to look at that, that's a natural place, is either a local or a cloud notebook.
I agree with that, but question the one notebook at a time as opposed to like a log notebook where you're submitting to the same file, appending or something to it each time.
I think creating an untitled notebook is the right thing to do.
For your use case, but say somebody that makes a form that's local and they want to submit their data somewhere, why not submit it to a notebook?
Well, okay, that's a different, then you're asking for another option here.
Maybe, yeah, like local file or any file. It could be a file on a network or somewhere.
Yes, well, that's a reasonable thing to do.
I think there are already too many options.
Well,
I can barely understand the ones that are here.
Okay, look.
And
the issue is, go ahead.
What I said was we should start with two. I didn't say we should not have the other.
Okay,
ones.
but we have more than that. We have other things working. We have this working, right, guys?
Yeah,
it's already working.
Yeah.
So we're not starting with anything. We've already got it. So
I think we need to keep custom all the time.
Yes.
It should always be there, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we've already got it, we shouldn't take it away. I don't think that's the right answer. No, this is not a place where complexity matters that much. The question in a pull down like this is there an item that does exactly what you want? If yes, you're a happy person. If no, you are frustrated, right? So having fewer items is not valuable here. It is valuable when it's at the top level and you're looking at this whole page like this, then it might be valuable to have fewer options. Do you see what I'm saying? But in the pull down, it doesn't matter. Plus, we've already built them. Okay, so let's look at the rest of this page. Is that what we're looking at? What are we looking at here?
This is not the right page because you're actually on the third page that actually includes.
I'm sorry. So what is the right page? I just clicked.
If you click on the hamburger menu on the top, the first page is the one up there. Yeah.
That's my fault. Sorry.
Okay, so what is the point here? What are we looking at on this page?
So if you move down, you will see actually we have specified, so initially in the current implementation, if user wants to specify send via email or submit to data bin, they have to write code, which it's considered.
Okay, hold on. So the problem we're trying to solve here is in the current version. So if I go to the current version here and I go to, what do I go to? Generate?
Settings, the gear menu.
Okay. And I say here, submission, create document, send email.
Yeah.
For God's sake, put a space after the comma. Does this really need to be that illiterate? What is this anyway? What is this?
Right. It just gives you a block
What
of
is
code
this?
to edit, but
It's
it should
like a-
be.
No, but what is
Exactly.
this? What is it even doing? What is this code even doing?
The slot is the association generated by the form notebook.
Yeah. So the
But
custom.
why is this saying toString? Why does it need the toString? It doesn't need the toString. Try using sendmail. It doesn't need the toString.
It'll rasterize it otherwise.
Really?
Yeah.
If you put an arbitrary expression
Okay.
instead of a string.
All right, but can we please
send it as
put a
attachment.
space there so that we're not illiterate?
Yes.
And you know, the fact that it doesn't have a space there is a big signal that I never looked at this. Did this ever get design reviewed?
That is
Yes.
actually what we are changing here.
No. I'm not talking about changing. I'm asking the procedural question: did this get design reviewed? And if not, why not?
Yes. You looked at this list of things. I don't know that we went through every single one of them with
Okay,
you,
all right, okay, fine.
but you provided this list of submission actions.
Okay, fine. All right. So now what you're trying to do here is to provide a GUI as an alternative to this code. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And why do we think that's important?
Because we have a GUI for everything else. This is
Okay,
supposed to
so
be for users
our
who don't have to write
experience-
code.
Okay.
I mean,
And also
I
it's
would have
easier
thought it would have
to-
been obvious in this case.
Okay. All right. Okay. But John, you've made the statement that the form notebooks are unusable.
Well, I mean, here is an example right here, you know, in the current implementation. Like
Even
I
just
said,
knowing that you have to use slot is like, you don't know that, you know?
No. Look. Okay. The question is, what is the cost of making a GUI for this? Okay. I mean, if this feature is never going to be used, we shouldn't waste the time to make a GUI for it.
I totally agree. You know, which is why I question, you know, the items that we put in the list, but I figured email was probably a fairly desirable item.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go back and look at that for a second here. Okay. So what we're trying to achieve is, instead of having code there, so what you're proposing here is, where is the email? Where is the thing that's proposed
It's right
here?
there, Steven.
This is.
It's right there.
You're
Yeah.
looking right at it.
Okay. So it's a pretty strange interface, isn't it? That this is a pull down, which seems like you're just setting something and then it extrudes a different thing here. Isn't that not the usual way that's done? When you're going to have something, what is this? Store the submitted response. What are you talking about? What is that? What is that?
Well, I mean, the question
is
is,
that? What is that? What are you
to
talking
do
about?
when you hit the submit button?
Which is why it says what to do with the form data here. It seems like a pretty clear thing to say. Whereas this one, I can't even understand. And response collections, what the hell does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that word mean? What does it mean? What does that heading mean? Explain. Who wrote that heading and what does it mean?
So for the code, we are actually having 3 separate things. The first one is the message dialog that is up as a section. And the next one is
the
action.
Is garbage. This is garbage. This is garbage. No, this is incomprehensible garbage. Properties of submissions? What do you mean by that? You mean what's going to happen when you press the submit button? Is that correct?
Right.
Is that what you mean?
The
Or is it
subheading
not
makes
what you mean?
sense. The subheading, submission button action, that makes sense.
That's fine,
We
which
can
is
get
right there.
Yeah, I don't know why we even need the one above it.
That response collections is part of that group, right?
Yeah, but what does it mean? What does it mean?
I don't know. I'm just saying that's why it's
But,
all
yeah,
part of that heading.
But that's at a lower level. Message is part of it, and response collections is part of it.
Okay,
Part of
so
submission button actions, the higher
So
level.
basically, what
Okay,
we really
got it.
want is to make submission button action. Okay, properties of okay. So the point here is properties of authoring notebook. Okay, so that's one thing. properties of generated form notebook. Okay. Okay, so we probably should say here, we imagined that we would have more stuff. So we should say properties of generated form notebook.
Someone in the chat said this thing is too tall, and I kind of agree. I wonder if this should be two different menus, two different dialogues.
I'm not even sure why you need the properties of generated form notebook.
You can
Or the
customize,
because-
customize the appearance of the notebook that you potentially
Yes.
send out all over the world.
Yes, that's what it is.
Isn't that what style sheets are for?
No, because this is,
I mean,
well,
no,
to some
if we
extent.
have
we
a
had a
GUI to
GUI
make a
for-
style sheet, yeah, then that we'd put a button right here that launches the style sheet.
Okay, but I do think this should be closed by default.
This
And this
is-
could say, because this is an obscure thing.
Well,
Th-
yeah,
this
This is the
I mean,
let them customize the 10 things most people want to customize with a simple GUI and not infinitely
Right, but we've already
customized.
built this, so we might as well have it. We can close it. Okay.
I don't agree with that philosophy.
Look.
And-
No. Wait a second. This is stuff you need. You need to know, what does it say on the submission button? Right. That's an example of something you need.
Okay, I didn't even realize that was an input field. Now I see
Yeah,
it.
it's not clear at all.
Right. Well,
I thought it just allowed you to choose the button color of the submit button. I didn't realize you could actually change the text of submit. That was
right. Okay. Well, fine. So this is probably badly set up. So look, possibly what this needs. Okay. If there was a picture of a sort of, okay. We got several things here. Okay. Okay. This is a settings dialog, and maybe we should break these settings up. Maybe this is super confusing.
okay.
Okay,
And
I mean-
by the way, the analytics is in the wrong section.
No, not necessarily. The
No.
reason that it's there is because we want to eventually have analytics like how long someone was doing the test and stuff like that.
It's a property of the submitted data, though. Doesn't have anything to do with the generated form notebook. It's a
Okay,
pro-
first
it's
point.
data that's being
Let's
submitted.
break this at the level of this, and maybe we should just call it settings or something here, and rather than that obscure, because this is a pretty important thing. Let's have a button there, possibly even with an icon, with a gear and then the word settings. Okay, and then what we can do is there are different kinds of settings. Okay, so there's authoring notebook, generated notebook, submission button action. Okay.
Yeah.
Does the
Now-
key numbering happen at the time of generation, or could it happen beforehand? I wonder if that could just be a
No, the
button.
key numbering. No. That's nothing to do with that. The key numbering is something different.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Right,
this
I
is-
know.
this
I
is-
understand what the key numbering is. I just wonder if it should be a button in the toolbar instead of in the settings menu, and then it would happen when you pushed it instead of at the time of generation.
Yeah, I mean,
And then we
this
could
is
get
I
rid of
see.
that.
having it as a checkbox and having it as the very first thing you see in a dialogue that you have to interface with is bad.
I kind of
That's
agree with
fair.
that.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I mean, it's like, a pimple on a pimple sort of thing, and we made it the number one thing.
Okay, so explain even what this is. What are you proposing for the key numbering thing?
Just have it be a button.
We have a toolbar.
It's
right?
an action, not a property.
Mhm.
In tools.
Right. In tools, and then whenever you push it, it renumbers them. So, yeah, it doesn't happen at the time of generation.
What
It's already
keys have
done.
numbers?
But wait a minute, but
Top level.
right, but doesn't it? I see. Otherwise, it never does it.
Right. If you're copying and pasting and moving around, then you need to have a process sort it all out for you.
And by the way, it's totally confusing to have an authoring notebook with different keys than a generated notebook. And
Aren't we forcing them
that's a
to
result of
name
it
their
being a
key?
property.
Are we auto numbering keys anymore? I thought we decided we're gonna make them label their key.
We're going to make them label their key.
So
So yeah,
this-
this
Oh
probably
no,
doesn't even-
I'm sorry. No, we're labeling.
key's the first field and it's also
Yes.
the label.
You're absolutely right.
So
Right.
you
So
don't
there's
need
no
key
auto
numbers.
numbering.
So the
Yeah.
check button should just check that they're all unique, and then you're done.
Right. Right. And that's an irrelevant. So we just get rid of this.
Also, does this dialog have to be one scroll view, or could we separate it out by nice
No,
tabs and
we're
stuff?
separating it. We're saying we're already agreeing.
Yeah.
It says settings, and it's going to separate settings, dialogues. Okay.
Right, like a notebook styles and submission action.
Would you suggest the
Seems-
layout like a tab view?
Yeah, so like what we're doing with the new preferences.
No. I'm not suggesting. I'm suggesting that the settings is a pull down here.
Oh, I see.
That
Okay.
goes to either submission action or, which I think is the right thing to say, submission action, or this thing here about.
Previously, you'd said submission button action.
I know. I think submission action makes
Okay.
sense though.
All right.
And then, what is this? What is this docked cell thing?
That's
The
the
text in the header.
Like on the left side.
What?
Generated
so it
form
can
is
be
not
like
the greatest
physics
default content.
101 quiz or something like
The
that.
form title then or something, right? Or-
Yes, it's the form title.
Right, and the default should probably not say generated form. It should probably say like
Hell no, it shouldn't.
My
say- it'd be
form.
blank.
or
Be blank.
yeah.
Right. So
or
this
with a hint.
is okay. So hold on.
I mean,
That's two different things here.
But we don't need a title at all. I mean, it's freeform content. You can just insert a title.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Sure
Remember.
you can.
You
Sure you
type
can.
in
Command
Oh,
one,
that's
title.
I see.
No, it's in a doc cell.
Yeah, but we don't. I mean, we don't
We're
even need the doc
enforcing that
cell.
there's a submit button there.
Yeah,
so
we want the
Well, the submit button doesn't need to be in a doc cell. I mean, the submit button could be, in an attached cell attached to the upper right corner of the window. It's, if you want a doc cell, that's fine, but it's certainly not necessary.
Okay, fine. Then this question, this is utterly confusing then. So, I mean, the main thing is you can paint a different, what is the submission button supposed to look like? That needs to be specified here, right? That's the only thing that's involved in this. And, you're not even putting in here, what about all kinds of hints and mouse overs and so on? I mean, you presumably want the ability to put code for that, right? Which we're not providing here, and we probably should, as a kind of a, maybe we don't give too many options, but we just say, this is what it says. I just think you do need to be able to paint something different on the button than just the word submit.
You
like-
can. I mean, you can.
I know
Or you
you
said-
put it there, but I mean, but order your aardvark now. I wonder if they're endangered species. They may not be orderable. In any case, no, but you see what I'm saying? That this, you got to have some way to give an option for what the button looks like, but it didn't need to be this elaborate. Okay, so that's thing number one, and then the submission actions here. Then you're saying we want GUIs for these submission actions. So let's just take a quick look at the proposed GUI for this. Okay. What? After we've thrown out the word response collections as being just mind-bogglingly meaningless. I'm not just playing stupid here. I do not know what that could possibly mean. What
I mean,
could that
for
possibly
those
mean?
people who are responding to the form, this is how you collect those responses. I mean, it's not the right
Response
wording. But
collections, plural?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
well, they're if in the cases of like a quiz, there's more than one response to this.
But it's not a
I
collection. The
know.
collection is singular. It's a collective object.
Okay,
And
I'm not
it's
arguing.
Response collection. I mean,
I'm
no,
not saying
how
it's the
to-
right words, but that's the
completely
intent.
crazy.
That's
And
the
and
intent.
why is that just procedurally for us, something for path? That was text we didn't write. Why isn't it in curly braces? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it should have been in curly braces.
Yeah, sorry,
it
it's
not
my
in
fault.
curly? Yeah, sorry.
It's not. You
Yeah,
can see it's
totally
not
my fault.
curly.
Yeah, sorry,
Right.
it's my fault. I
Okay.
forgot that. Yeah.
But I don't even know what the thinking was. But anyway, whatever. I'm not even going to go there. Okay. All right. So, okay. Send via email. All right. So then something, this is not the right UX to have something extrude. This has got to be a more heading type thing that then makes it clear that there are sub pieces that are then selected based on what that heading is. Okay, so the key problem with this recipients business, gosh, the number one thing here is send to myself. Right now, you have an interface where I have to type my name here, right?
Yes, but
it's stupid. It's just stupid. I'm sorry. It's just like that's the number one thing you want. The number two issue is we don't have a way of importing the reason that our send mail stuff is, like send notebook to me doesn't work very well is that we don't have a way of using the autocompletes and contacts that exist on your computer. That's a more general UX issue. I don't know whether John, Paul,
it's a more general technology issue, not a.
Okay, so it's not exposed in any kind of. Is there a way in which contacts can get? Is there any API in the operating system that allows you to? What's that?
No.
Yeah. So is it an application by application thing?
Yeah.
Bluff. And there's no this mappy thing or whatever it is for mail, this multi-mail.
I mean, if the mail server was properly configured in Wolfram language, then we might be able to query your address book on your mail server. But most people do not do that, so we can't rely on that at all.
I mean, do mail clients store address books as in a file that could be pointed to?
That's a security problem, right? I hope not.
Yeah, I mean
they do though. It isn't a file.
But which mail client are you using? Which mail client are you actively using? Even if we scrape your disk, which would scare people.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that this be anything automatic. You could say, load my.
No, if it's not automatic, give up.
Well, okay. I suppose.
Well, I mean, back to the earlier thing of, most people, and reasonably so, don't even configure the mail preferences to do anything other than the default, which is to send through the cloud if you're logged in and do nothing if you're not logged in.
Okay, here's a question. Maybe this is crazy. Your mail, we can pull up with a mail to link. We can pull up a piece of mail, right? A mail composition window. A mail to link will do that.
It might be completely wrong, but yeah.
But there's a decent chance that somebody has configured it so that the mail to link that they hit in a browser will go to a reasonable mail client.
If by decent, you mean maybe 25 to 40%? Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take that. So let's imagine that there was an interface here where you bring up a mail to window. I admit this might seem a little crazy, but you bring up a mail to window and it sends back to a mail receiver function address. And all right, this is ornate, but let's just try it for a second. And then what you do is you fill in the destination that you want for your mail using all the auto-completion stuff that you have in your mail client. And you send that to the mail receiver function, which then inserts it into the actual send to. Okay, so in other words,
that's elaborate.
I can't imagine anyone would ever actually understand that.
Wait,
That's
who's
elaborate.
the
well,
UI?
the question is whether they need to understand it, because here's what it's like. Okay, when we do third-party authentication, like for example, you say I want to use some API from random, I don't know, from Facebook or something, if they've even got any APIs anymore. you say you want to do that, you run a piece of code that does that, that says, whatever it is, that says Service Connect or whatever, right? What happens when you say Service Connect to Facebook? What happens? Answer: it pops a web page that says now log into Facebook. You see what I'm saying? It says this is the Wolfram connector that is being hosted by Facebook so that you can log in and authenticate on Facebook. As soon as you press the go button, the channel framework is automatically sucking that data back and using it to, sort of set up the innards of the service connection for Facebook.
So how does your system not send 2 emails to the recipients?
Okay, because what happens is that the mail to link that you are given here. Oh, I see what you're saying.
The only way you get completions is by typing the names in to or CC or BCC, which means you just sent your.
funny.
You just sent a garbage mail to all your
right. The mail client would need to autocomplete in the body.
Okay, here's a question. Yeah. Is there any interface? All right, so a different solution, a much better solution actually all around would be something, if there was a mail to link, which I'm sure doesn't exist, that if there was a way of saying in the mail to link, initiate a piece of with this attachment in it. Is that hopeless?
Well, I mean,
I think we'd have better success having a service connection to like Gmail to import contacts.
So that's when you're back to the Mappy stuff.
Is that what Mappy tries to do?
Well, that's in fact what Send Mail under Windows used to do until we changed it over in what was it, version maybe 11.3 or something like that.
Listen, we have to wrap this meeting. I'm not a happy camper with this. This looks like typical somebody took a language design and tried to make an unbelievably complicated, incomprehensible GUI out of it. Sorry. Can't even imagine what this is.
Yeah, I think that's how the data is formatted in the body of the email.
Yeah, I
can't even imagine it.
Yeah, I don't know about the associations business, but the rest of it, text aside, is fairly straightforward.
For email though, you want to think about, do they want an association, or do they want to actually be able to read it, formatted?
Or do they want an attached notebook? Because some of the content may be notebook content, unsendable in email. What if the person filled in a captured video? I mean, it's just no.
That's what we need to keep the custom. The custom action allows them to do.
Okay, but that's not a custom action. Is not what we want. What we want is for the thing. Okay, when you say send via email, I think, I don't know what it does right now, but I think textualizing it is crazy. I think it should just send an attached notebook. I think it should generate the notebook and send it. And other things should be, maybe we want, and this is why I think having a longer list.
I mean that's useless upon useless.
Why?
Well, okay, so you have 2 possibilities. You can send a custom notebook where we're back to our previous problem. All of the hair around how you customize a notebook, or you can send a default notebook. What is a default notebook? A default notebook is an association. It's just a cell with an association.
Right.
It's an expression. Useless. It's nothing else.
Useless.
I would rather have it in plain text than have to open emails.
Well, what happens if there's an image?
Yeah, you're in plain text input, but yeah, anything else, graphics.
It's a Wolfram language expression. It will come through as an image, for better or worse. That's what it will do.
Okay, but
the language doesn't have a problem with this. The only people who have a problem with it are us.
Okay, so I'm going to argue that the only thing that's useful in email here. Okay, why do I even want it in email? Okay, I don't think it's to read it as a human. I think it is simply because the plumbing of the world is such that if you want to get something to somebody, a good way to send it is through email.
I mean, look, in my view, the template notebook case aside, in my view, the absolute happy path is the data bin. But there are some people who are not going to use data bins, maybe because they have, excuse me, maybe because they have security and privacy issues. They're behind a firewall and they can't talk to, our public data bins, and so they need an alternative.
Actually, the nicest alternative will be a mail receiver function. Look, if you're using mail as simply a way to have tubes through the world, so to speak, then the thing you want to receive to is ultimately something that processes an expression.
Then you have to write a mail receiver function.
Well,
and then you might as well just be putting that function in the custom action here.
No, that's not correct. Because think about whose computer it runs on. Right.
So, and it can be cloud deploying API, and you put URL execute in the custom function.
Right, but the thing is that let's look at what the different use cases are.
One of them passes through mail protocols. One of them would just be
I know.
And
the question is
less likely to mangle stuff.
The question is this. You've given out form notebooks to the masses, so to speak, to use. Right? Okay, let's talk about how they will use those form notebooks. So one possibility is the form notebooks are deployed in the cloud. Right? If they're deployed in the cloud, what should come back is probably cloud objects. In other words, what comes back is an expression which it has to tell you, okay, so there's three different things going on. Number one, it has to tell you somebody submitted something on this form, right? That's one thing. You don't necessarily know that.
A notification.
Right. Thing number two is, give me the thing they submitted. Okay? Or get me the thing they submitted. So one way they could submit something is as a cloud object. Because they just the person who pressed submit in the form notebook, what they did is, they had prepared this beautiful expression, which is some kind of association. Okay, they threw it out there in the world for somebody to catch. Okay, so the question is, how did they do the throwing, and how did the catcher catch it, and what did they do with it? Right, and the catcher might, on the one hand, kind of smart contract might want something autonomously to happen. Okay, like a mail receiver function, like an API. Or they might merely want to be told, okay, great, it's accumulating. Good, somebody filled that out. And, later they will harvest all the things that were filled out. Do you see what I'm saying? So, for example, it could be the case that they say, some people are filling out a survey. Many people fill out the survey. I'm going to wait until 1,000 people have filled out the survey, and then I'm going to do big data analysis on it. Okay? For which I don't really want an action taking place immediately. I just want these things, these droppings somewhere of the associations from every filling out of that survey. Okay, so I claim that in terms of how do I throw the data? One way is you put it in the cloud. Okay, another way is you send it by email. Another way you might throw the data is to a file on your own computer. Another thing you might do is to a data bin.
I mean,
you can put the data in an HTTP request.
When we talk about the cloud, I don't know why data bin isn't the first way to think about this.
It's a natural fit.
It's totally a natural fit. I think it's a natural fit for some purposes and not for others. So, for example, let's say this is maybe it is. Maybe it's for everything. I don't know.
I remember data bin can store arbitrary Wolfram language expressions. Everything coming out of here is an association. You keep saying notebook content, but it's all an association. It's all Wolfram language expression.
Fair enough. Fair point. So you're saying that the primary thing then is a data bin entry, And
Yeah.
maybe all the email is a notification, just like it is with report generation.
And if we don't, I don't know if data bins have a notification feature, but that can be
They
a
do.
property of the data bin if it's not. So
They
Yeah,
do.
they do.
They do. And
so
they do.
so,
And it's
so we
like
don't have
report
to
generation.
reinvent the wheel here.
Right. So you're saying it's a notification, just like it is for report generation and for data bins. And then we don't even have an email option here.
Right. And we could write a resource function that, if we want it to be notebook content, that creates an API that collects notebook content, and then you would just have a URL execute in here that the resource function gives you to stick into the custom field. Right.
Okay.
That might be a nice workflow.
Yeah. Let me just reemphasize. I said this before, but let me reemphasize. I mean, if you're talking about mass collection, data bin is 100% the natural fit, but there will be some people who simply can't use data bin. We do need a backup for those people.
Right. Security is certainly an issue.
Well, and also, yes, if I'm using this as a personal loop, so to speak, I'm just using form notebooks to fill out, what I eat every day, and I just want to accumulate it on my computer, and I'm not going to mess around with data bins and so on.
Right. I mean, having put append of cloud object, put append hash cloud object is also a very reasonable thing to do with this. Right.
I see.
So your case, Stephen, I think there's some value to it, but it's tertiary value. I mean, you could have had your own personal data bin if you, if you didn't mind Wolfram having the data. So
right.
If I was going to
private cloud,
if I was going to make up a third action besides custom to add to this list, it would be put append to cloud object, which is kind of like data bin, but then it's a cloud object in your cloud account that you can manipulate like a file anywhere, anyhow you want.
Well, in so
the authors
and
then
so
you have to be the one
to configure the permissions appropriately, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that seems silly to me. I mean, we've got data bin, which does it essentially just that.
The only problem with data bin, it's hard to wrangle the data once it's in there, delete things, move things around. If things are messed up, it's clunky.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard. If we give people the ability to put in a custom cloud object and they start monkeying with that cloud object, then there's going to be
a list of associations.
Yeah, well, I mean,
index or something.
So, I mean, if we have a feature that, in this case, data bin that, fits 90% of our criteria, but it has a 10% problem, let's fix the 10%. Let's not implement an entirely parallel thing.
Yeah.
That's my view.
I'm kind of agreeing with you here. I mean, okay, this local loop, like the copy to clipboard and things, is that useful? I mean, that might be useful for a lightweight form notebook that is basically my way of creating. See, this is the thing. This is the thing, guys. This is why the local notebook thing is useful, okay? I've had use cases where this form notebook is fundamentally a way to just save me typing. Let me give you an example, okay? Give you an example. Let's say I want to enter, I've got random medical test results that got sent to me in a PDF, okay? I want to enter them in a way that is, well, you're saying I want to enter them, maybe that's a bad example. Maybe it's something which has some images in it or something like this. I want to enter them in some way where I can essentially lightweight copy and paste them to put them in a data structure that I just have in a notebook, right? So in other words, I'm using the form notebook merely as a lightweight structured input mechanism for something I could otherwise just type in a notebook. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a typing assistant thing.
So in this case, you're creating an association, which maybe you're putting into a list of associations or
but I'm doing that. Whatever. I just want that association. I'm going to put it in my mouse. I'm going to put it somewhere. Right. I'm not going to do any elaborate data binning or anything like that. This is just a saving typing type thing. Now, I admit that form functions, local form functions in a notebook do this kind of thing, and I've never used them for that. Even though this is something I've needed to do many times, where I've got something where I just want to enter something in a structured way, and I mean, I don't even know. Let's see. In that case, they're just in the output line. I think the problem in that case is this: Yes, here's the problem with that. The problem is I don't have a peel-off mechanism for the forms, for the form objects. What do I mean by that? I mean that what I want to do is I want 30 times, I want to, do this little piece of typing, structured typing, and generate an association. But what all form object does, form function does in a notebook is it does it once. Am I making sense?
Well, what happens after you
It
press
turns
the
into its result. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns into its result. And that
Form
way,
page lets you do it a bunch of times.
but you can't do form page inside a notebook, can you?
I think you can.
Well, maybe
I don't know. I never
mean.
do it, so I shouldn't claim.
I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah.
Well, so that's a way to do that. But then we should use that mechanism, whatever that mechanism is. We should clean that mechanism and be able to use form notebooks inside form page, for example.
Well, and this comes back to another issue around form notebooks is, what happens when you press the submit button multiple times? And this is potentially a bit confusing because people might think that, maybe they're fixing their submission when in fact they're appending to it.
That should be another thing in this settings menu to allow repeated submissions. Or
so your use case,
okay,
wants a repeated,
right.
an
Actually,
appending
a comment from Nick on live stream is, what about things like S3 buckets, which we have with external storage? Right. I mean, just as you can send it to a data bin, you could also imagine sending it to a blockchain, S3, all these kinds of things,
sure,
for which we have code to do that. Now, is it worth hinting that you could do that here? Maybe yes, I don't know.
Is that custom or isn't that covered?
I'm not sure. Yeah, it sort of is, right? I mean, it sort of is. And so long as we can have examples somewhere in some workflow documentation or something about doing that, then that's probably reasonable.
It's a good idea. Have a doc page with a bunch of examples and then link to it from the dropdown or next to the dropdown.
Yeah, why not? And that way, right, it'll be a workflow page, I think, because these are complicated things that involve external services. Nick says, various people are commenting. Yeah, I mean, I hope people appreciate that these things that appear simple are not as simple as they appear in terms of creating UXs that aren't completely crazy. And, a minimal UX to make something simple tends to be very complicated.
Well, and let's be clear, the initial UX, which you fairly harshly criticized, but that UX was guided a lot by a design which, upon closer scrutiny, we believe to be mistaken. An overall design.
Well, I don't know how overall the design is mistaken.
Well, I mean the issue of keys and subkeys.
Yeah, sub-elements was crazy.
That's what I mean.
Crazy. Yeah, that was crazy.
But that was difficult to surmise merely from UX. We had to take a bigger perspective to understand that.
Indeed, which is the usual case in these situations. All right, listen, we need to wrap up here, and we're running all sorts of time problems here. Okay, so there's actually another live stream for people who are interested. It's a incremental language development live stream, which will be coming up in a few minutes, but I need to get a bite to eat before that happens. Should start in about 10 minutes, I would say. Okay, good stuff. Thank you all. Thanks to folks on the live stream.